He tossed her medals into the trash, laughing. 15 minutes later, the airport went silent because over 100 commanders walked in at once. The airport was already loud when she arrived, rolling luggage, boarding calls, impatient families, but something about her presence quieted the air around her like a shifting tide. Commander Riley Hart, Navy SEAL, decorated twice for valor, walked toward the TSA checkpoint with the posture of someone who didn't need to prove anything. Her civilian jacket covered the faint outline of old scars, and her medals, 3 of them, were tucked neatly inside a small protective case. They weren't expensive pieces of metal. They were stories, each one soaked in sand, sweat, and the memory of brothers and sisters who never made it home. She placed her bag on the conveyor belt with calm precision. The TSA agent barely looked up. A bored sigh escaped him. "Ma'am, remove all metal items." She opened the small case gently and placed her medals in a gray plastic bin. The agent glanced at them, then frowned. "What are these?" "Military decorations," Riley answered simply. He picked one up, turned it around like a toy, and scoffed. "You can buy these things online. Souvenirs, right?" Riley didn't blink. "No, sir. They're authentic." He rolled his eyes, loud enough it felt like a performance. "Well, they're not allowed through unless you prove that." Already, people in line shifted uncomfortably. Riley kept her voice neutral. "They're listed under protected personal items. You can check." But the agent didn't check anything. He lifted the medals and dropped them into a trash bin beside him. Metal hit plastic with a hollow clack. Riley didn't move. Didn't gasp. Didn't flinch. Stillness is a learned discipline, one she'd earned in deserts, jungles, and black site corridors where a single twitch meant death. "Sir," she said quietly, "those belong to fallen teammates." He waved her off. "Then file a complaint. Next." People in line froze. A mother covered her mouth. A man muttered, "No way." Someone grabbed a phone to record. But Riley? She simply exhaled and reached into her wallet. She didn't pull out an ID. She pulled out a small gold-edged card. The TSA agent's eyebrows pulled together. "What's that?" She placed it calmly on the counter. "A number." "A number for what?" "For the person you just insulted." The agent laughed. "Who, you?" "No," Riley said. "For them." The them wasn't clarified. It didn't have to be. She stepped aside, dialed the number, and spoke quietly into the phone. A few words. A confirmation. A soft understood. Then she hung up. Nothing about her face changed. But the airport changed. 15 minutes later, everything stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. The flight boards froze. The escalators halted. Announcements cut off mid-sentence. The TSA agent frowned. "What's going on?" Then the glass doors at the far end of the terminal slid open, and a wave of uniforms entered. Not soldiers. Not officers. Commanders. More than 100 of them. Dress blues, olive drabs, rows of ribbons that shimmered under airport lights. Men and women who carried the kind of authority that made crowds instinctively part like water around a battleship. Passengers stepped aside. The entire terminal went silent. Leading them was a gray-haired admiral with a walk that said he'd carved his place in military history with grit and bone. Every TSA agent on duty stiffened. The admiral didn't look at them. His eyes went straight to Riley, standing calm, hands folded behind her back, waiting as if she expected this. He approached, stopped inches from her, and saluted. "Commander Hart," he said, voice like thunder wrapped in velvet. "We came as soon as we heard." Gas erupted across the terminal. The TSA agent who threw away her medals went pale. Riley returned the salute. Sir, I apologize for the disturbance. Disturbance? The Admiral cut in. You were disrespected on U.S. soil after returning from classified service. That is not a disturbance. That is a reckoning. Passengers murmured. Someone whispered, "She's a SEAL?" Another said, "A commander?" The Admiral turned to a pair of officers. "Retrieve her medals." They nodded sharply, walked to the trash bin, and lifted the lid. Only for the Admiral to say, "No, not with your hands." He snapped his fingers. A Marine Major stepped forward, removed his dress gloves, laid them on Riley's bin, then used the gloves to pick up the medals with ceremonial reverence, as if they were sacred. He placed them into Riley's palm. "Ma'am," he said solemnly, "your fallen will be honored properly." The agent tried to back away, but the Admiral's gaze snapped to him. "Son," he said, voice hard enough to cut granite, "do you know what you threw away?" The agent swallowed. I didn't think they were real." "Of course you didn't," the Admiral said, "because real sacrifice is invisible to people who've never seen war." The room stayed silent. Riley spoke gently. "Sir, don't discipline him on my behalf." "I'm not disciplining him," the Admiral replied. "I'm educating him." He turned to the agent fully. "Those medals aren't decorations. They're gravestones for people who died, so you could stand here safe and bored." The agent's eyes filled with shame. I'm sorry." Riley nodded once. "Not in forgiveness. In acknowledgement. Because forgiveness is earned." The Admiral placed a hand on her shoulder. "You ready to go home, Commander?" Riley glanced around the airport, the stunned faces, the forming respect, the quiet power of truth finally rising. "Yes, sir." "Then let's escort you properly." A formation of commanders surrounded her. Passengers clapped. Some saluted. Some cried. And Riley Hart walked forward with the calm dignity of a soldier who knew exactly who she was. And who she lost. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss another mission. The stories are real. The honor is too. The airport escorted procession moved like a tide of authority through Terminal C travelers, pressed themselves against walls, phones raised, some recording, others simply watching with an awe usually reserved for legends. Riley Hart didn't bask in it. Didn't slow her stride. Didn't smile. Recognition was never her currency. Service was. But she could feel something shifting in the air, respect sharpening, judgment dissolving, truth replacing ignorance. The TSA supervisor hurried over, sweating through his uniform. "Commander Hart," he stammered, I sincerely apologize for my agent's behavior. This wasn't..." The Admiral cut him off with a single raised hand. "Supervisor," he said, tone steady but edged like a drawn blade, "if you spent less time apologizing and more time training your staff, this wouldn't have happened." The supervisor swallowed. The Admiral continued. "Do you know how many times this woman deployed?" The supervisor shook his head. "Do you know how many of her teammates didn't return?" The supervisor's shoulders slumped. The Admiral's voice dropped lower. "Do you know how many times she saved people she will never meet, including you?" The supervisor didn't speak again. Riley did. "Sir," she said quietly, "my service isn't a shield to hit people with. I've done my job. They must do theirs." The Admiral looked at her with the respect only warriors understand. "That humility is why we're here," he said. "Not because you demanded it, but because you didn't." The escort resumed. But something strange began happening as they walked. Travelers stepped forward with trembling hands and soft voices. A middle-aged man with a prosthetic leg whispered, "Welcome home, ma'am." A young woman held up a folded flag and said, "My brother didn't make it back. Thank you for carrying the weight." A boy saluted her with 2 fingers and said, "My dad's a soldier." Riley nodded to every one of them. Not with grandeur, with solemn recognition. Because they were the real story. The silent backbone of every mission she'd run. As they neared the terminal exit, The Marine major who had retrieved her medals walked beside her.
"Ma'am," he said, "permission to ask something personal?" "Go ahead."
You didn't look angry when the agent threw them away. Why?
She paused, just enough to show respect for the question. "Because medals don't make me who I am," she said. "The people behind them do." The major swallowed hard. "And because," she added softly, "if I lost my temper every time someone underestimated a woman in uniform, I'd never stop fighting."
The major nodded. No more questions.
They reached a quieter part of the terminal, a long corridor leading to a private exit. Here, the mood shifted again. No cameras, no applause, no gawking crowds. Just soldiers. 100 commanders formed 2 straight lines, creating a corridor of honor. The Admiral turned to Riley. "Walk through," he said. "This is for your fallen." Riley inhaled slowly. Every step echoed.
Tap. Tap.
Commanders saluted as she passed, some with chins trembling, others with eyes hardened by memories they'd never speak aloud. At the halfway point, the Admiral spoke behind her. "Riley," he said, using her first name for the first time, "you didn't call just to report disrespect. You called because you wanted us to hear what happened. You could have handled it alone. Why didn't you?" She stopped walking, turned slightly, and answered. "Because respect isn't about me," she said. "It's about every young girl who put on a uniform someday. If I let someone throw away my medals quietly, he'll do the same to her." The Admiral absorbed her words like an impact. "You're not here for yourself," he said quietly. "No, sir. You're here to open a door." "Yes, sir." His voice dropped. "And that is leadership." Riley continued down the corridor. At the end, a car waited. But before she reached it, something unexpected happened. A woman in civilian clothes stepped forward from the shadows. Her hands shook. Her eyes were red. Riley recognized her immediately. She'd seen that face beside a flag-draped coffin overseas. The mother of a teammate. "Commander Hart," the woman whispered. Riley stood straighter.
"Ma'am?"
The woman held out a small, worn patch, sun-bleached, frayed at the edges. A team insignia. "I kept this after they sent. After I got the call," the mother said. "He always said you were the bravest of them. He trusted you." A single tear slid down her cheek. "I want you to have this." Riley accepted the patch like it was a living heartbeat. "I'll carry it," she said softly. "Always." A soft sob escaped the woman as Riley stepped closer and embraced her, gently but firmly. Someone in the line whispered, "God, they really were family." The Admiral opened the car door. "Where to, Commander?" he asked. Riley didn't answer right away. Her eyes drifted across the airport, where people had returned to motion, but with new awareness in their expressions. Respect sparked in places where ignorance had been. Finally, she said, "Back to base. I have cadets to train. They need to understand what real service means."
The Admiral nodded.
"Then we'll get you there." Riley entered the car. The door shut. The convoy rolled out. And the airport slowly returned to normal. Except nothing was normal anymore. People who'd witnessed it would tell the story for years. Some would exaggerate. Some would minimize it. But all would remember the truth. A SEAL woman's medals were thrown into the trash. And 100 commanders came to stand behind her. Not because she demanded it, but because she deserved it.
The TSA supervisor was still arguing with the SEAL woman when the echo hit. A thunderous, synchronized clack, clack, clack of combat boots entering the terminal. Every civilian froze. Every agent turned pale. Because marching straight through the checkpoint, Ignoring every protest, every rule, were over 100 SEAL commanders, uniforms crisp, eyes cold, purpose unmistakable. At the front was a Rear Admiral, jaw locked like granite. The TSA supervisor stammered. You can't be in H here. Well, you can't just... The Admiral didn't even slow. He stopped in front of the woman, snapped to a salute sharp enough to cut the air, and said loudly so the entire terminal could hear, "Lieutenant Commander, your medals are intact. They're with my aide. They carry combat verification signatures, including mine." Gasps rippled across the airport. The TSA agent who threw her medals away visibly shook. He whispered, "Sir, I didn't know." The Admiral's stare hardened. "Son, when you touch a warrior's honors, you'd better know exactly who you're dealing with." Two commanders stepped past him, opened a sealed case, and revealed the medals, clean, polished, restored with military precision. The woman didn't break posture. She simply nodded and said, "Thank you, sir. Mission preserved." Then the Admiral turned to the entire terminal and barked, "Clear the area. This airport is now under temporary military hold." And in seconds, crowds parted. Agents scrambled out of the way. And the SEAL woman walked through the checkpoint. Not as a victim, but as a warrior the entire airport now feared to disrespect.